Oh, hello, my darling listener, and welcome to this Soul Sync Christmas special. I'm Jason Paul, and I'm really glad you're here. Christmas is a natural pause point, a time where the world slows, we reflect more deeply, and we ask questions about love, life, and loss naturally. They all kind of surface at this time of the year. It's a time we stop, though. We all stop. Nature rests. Things go quiet, and we turn inward rather than outward. It's a reminder that not everything needs action. Some things just need presence. Now, I've got a little Christmas special for you today because it's another one from my Soul Sync archive. And when I came across it, the first thing I did was burst out laughing because it is a really funny conversation. So it instantly made me smile when I saw it again. And it sort of brought me right back here to Christmas. And his name is Simon Bown. He is the host of Our Paranormal Afterlife. He's an investigator, not a preacher. He's open-minded, curious, grounded, and someone who genuinely loves exploring proof of life after death. Honestly, having someone who has a podcast on the podcast, me interviewing him, and he was such a good storyteller. He honestly you're in for some of these best stories you can possibly imagine. So it really is a Christmas treat, because when I heard it, it was like I hadn't heard it ever before because it was recorded such a long time ago. So Soul Sync, I send you so much Christmas love, and be safe, drink a glass of wine or two, have a mince pie, you know how it is, but most importantly, enjoy this moment with Simon Bown. So Simon, firstly, a massive warm welcome onto the Soul Sync podcast.
Thanks. It's exciting to be here. I love talking about this stuff.
Oh, well, it's very, very, very exciting to have you here. So thank you. So you host a podcast yourself, the Paranormal Afterlife podcast. So I think we're going to be in for a really interesting conversation. But let's start off. Tell us about you and, how you've come to even be involved in this world.
Well,
of the unseen, I guess.
Yeah, I've always been interested in it. So it's not that kind of story where I've had experiences from a young age. It's just having an interest. There were a couple of little experiences, but I'm not sure what they were. Like waking up at night and hearing a dog in the room growling at me, and we didn't have a pet dog. Or having these really vivid dreams of traveling somewhere. But I used to go to the local public library, even when I was 10 years old, and get any book I could, which could have been about Bigfoot or UFOs or ghosts or, just paranormal stuff. And over the years, my interests kind of matured, you might say. I mean, I'm not so interested in Bigfoot now, but, I'm really interested in the afterlife. But I wouldn't criticize people who are really interested in Bigfoot. They know a lot more about it than I do. So I don't like it when people criticize me, or say, oh, that afterlife stuff's a load of rubbish, because they usually don't know what they're talking about. So I used to read all these books, and I was watching all the films like Close Encounters of the Third Kind and all this paranormal. And when I got to the 1980s, I started going to the College of Psychic Studies in London. And that is a place where you could be trained. They train you in mediumship and psychic stuff, taking people through past life regression. They had a trance medium there. And you pay a little bit of money, because I wasn't a student, and the students could practice on you. Or you pay a lot more money and the teachers would give you a session. And so I sat with a trance medium, and I sat with a medium, all sorts of people, and I was taken through a past life regression. And I found it fascinating, and it was almost like I felt like an investigator, like somebody with an open mind, and it's feel like I've got a grey area that's very big. It's like if you have this much space, this bit's, I definitely don't believe that. And this bit is, I believe that. And in between's the grey area where you're not quite sure what to do with the information. But I was at the college with this medium, and she was saying to me, there's somebody called George here to talk to you. Do you know a George? And I was like, no, don't know a George. And it's like every 10 minutes she'd come back to it. It's like, George is very insistent. And she said, well, we'll leave it. If you don't know anybody called George, we'll leave it. And I got home and I said to my mum, they kept saying somebody called George is coming through. And my mum was like, that's your grandfather. For me, it was like, I always knew him as Granddad. I didn't ever call him George or that kind of thing. It's one of those weird little kind of verifications that some genuine information's coming through.
So that's kind of what, as such, acted as the catalyst to kind of sent you on what is and the only reason my maths is so good is because you went for this reading in 1987, which is my year of birth. So I know exactly that you have been investigating this now for 36 years, which is a lot of years to, be kind of, very much investigating, I guess.
Yeah.
So sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, I've had little experiences since then. That first past life regression was really quite powerful. And I might come back to that and explain how it all links up. But I've seen UFOs really close up, actual craft that was stationary and just 25, 30 feet off the ground.
Where was this? Tell us more about this.
One of those, it was the early 1990s, and I played bass, and I was gigging with a band. It was a Sunday night gig at a pub west of London, and I was on the M40 heading back into town. It's like 1 a.m. on a Monday morning. No other vehicles on the motorway, which seems a little weird. And up ahead of me on the left, I could see really bright lights in the field just off the motorway. And I knew that space, and I was thinking, that's just an empty field. Where's that light coming from? And I thought maybe it's emergency gas main repairs or electricity lines or something. And so I slowed the car right down. So even though I was on a motorway, there were no other cars. So I dropped my speed to like 5 miles an hour, and I slowly crawled, and there were these trees in the way. And then as I got past the trees, there was this object, and it was shaped like a rugby ball, about the size of a large house. One half of the bottom of it was completely covered in really bright red little lights, pin spot lights, which we might see them as LEDs these days. But in the early 90s, we didn't have those. And coming from the other end of this craft was a really powerful spotlight pointed at the ground. And so I'm crawling along at 5 miles an hour, leaning forward, looking up through the windscreen at it, completely silent, didn't move an inch the whole time. And you do a kind of mental checklist. You think, well, it's definitely not an aeroplane. It's not a helicopter. It's not a hot air balloon. It's I don't know what this thing is. And then I just sped up and drove home, which seemed a little weird, thinking that, I'm so interested in UFOs. But
do you still to this day believe that 100% with all your conviction that was a UFO?
In as much as you could say it was an unidentified flying object, I wouldn't say, oh, that's definitely an alien spaceship, but it was something very weird. And I wonder if perhaps it knew I was coming, and so it showed itself to me. And it's this idea that we're on some kind of a path, maybe a spiritual path. And every now and then we get a little baby step, and something will paranormal will happen. It may be psychic. It may be seeing a ghost. It might be seeing a UFO. And they're showing themselves to you to help you on your path. And I heard an interview with a guy who's an expert on UFOs, and the way he said it, he's an American guy, he said, they're giving you a slap in the pants, they're slapping you on the ass, saying, hey, pay attention. And it's how it all comes together. We're all being shown stuff. If you see a UFO, it's because they want you to see them. It's not an accident.
Well, I do agree with that. And obviously we have similar podcasts in a sense. My belief is, you do get these signs or whatever you're meant to have at the perfect opportune moment to get you on your path. Mine was, I found myself in the Arthur Findlay College, and honestly, I was like a 20 years experienced medium. It was just coming to me, no problem. So, I had my own experiences in that regard. Obviously, you are very fascinated by UFOs. I don't just say that from the fact you've got a podcast. I can see many interesting books behind you. In terms of UFOs, from all your research and interviews, what is your actual opinion on them now?
My feeling is that they're not just metal spaceships with little scientists studying Earth, that there's something much more spiritual about them, and that we could say they're interdimensional, or they come from another universe, the multiverse or something. But I also think that there may be a space where they're coming from that we can't really define. And so we'll say another dimension just as a placeholder. I talked to a woman on my podcast who does a thing. She's a kind of medium that communicates with spirit guides. And so that's what we were talking about. And she said one night she woke up standing next to her bed, and these 4 alien greys were at the foot of her bed. And she was freaked out, and she looked to her right, and her body was in the bed. It's like she was having an out-of-the-body experience. And that was a sudden shock for her. And then she was back in her body, and she sat up, and those ETs were not there. So it made me think that when I had an out-of-body experience, she was in what you might call the astral plane, and that's where the ETs were. So they were still in the room with her, but they were, it's like with mediums say you have to raise your vibrations to make contact, or the frequency has to increase or something.
Yes.
So the ETs can be in that space. And that's the interdimensional maybe thing about it. And I've talked to many people who've had all sorts of experiences, and I hear it so often. It gets so weird. And for me, the more weird it is, the more interested I am. Some people get turned off by it.
Oh, I think I get turned on by it, to be honest with you. I'm the same as you. I find it very interesting. There's obviously so much in this world or universe. I like the way actually you describe it as a placeholder. I think that's a very adept way of describing it. Tell us about some of the stories that you've heard, because you were telling me before we started recording, 400 episodes. That's no mean feat. Obviously, it seems to me, and I get the sense that the more you do, the more you know. It might almost seem like the more you know, the more you don't know, and it's what's propelling you to probably go on and do the next 400. But tell us about some of the stories and experiences you've come across then on your travels.
Well, a UFO one is that lots of people who claim to be abducted by aliens talk about having a compulsion to go somewhere for no reason, but it's a really strong one. There was a guy, his name's Steve Astin, I think. He worked on a building site when he was 18, 19 years old, and he worked 6 days a week, and the Sunday was the day off, and he loved Sunday. And for some reason, he set his alarm, got up at 6 a.m. on the Sunday morning, and went to the building site. And when he got there, it was like the sun was just coming up. And then in an instant, the sun was up. He said it was like there was no weird fuzzy feeling or your sight went weird. It was like somebody cut the film. And he was by this building, and they hadn't installed the windows yet. And he could see through this window and out another one. And there was this UFO. And he said it was kind of tilted at 15 degrees. And he said there was something wrong with it. Like he was out of phase with our reality. And then it disappeared. And it's this thing that people, so there's the compulsion. I've heard people talk about that, going somewhere and there's a UFO there. It's like they're controlling you telepathically. And there's this missing time thing that I find fascinating. He lost a couple of hours, and it was so well cut out of his memory. And there was another guy who, in the States, he had a Harley Davidson and it was his pride and joy. And he'd only drive it on really clean tarmac because he didn't want little pebbles to spit up and affect the chrome and stuff. He said he was doing 70 down this nice piece of tarmac. An instant later, he was doing 30 on a dirt road, somewhere he would never take his bike. And he lost like 45 minutes. It's just gone. What happened to this time? So I find these stories fascinating. And then also other stuff is like children with past life memories. And you can go into that, and there's so much in depth, and there's so many of these stories. Then there's 2 or 3 really famous ones, but there are so many that are just as compelling and seem so evidential for reincarnation. So I show you a couple of pictures.
Oh, yes, if you
I've got
like.
a book here.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Here it is. This is written by Dr. Ian Stevenson from the University of Virginia, When Reincarnation and Biology Intersect. And this is 100 cases of children who remember a past life, and they have a birth defect or a birthmark that relates directly with their past life memory.
Oh, wow.
Now
That's very interesting.
This boy here, can you see that picture?
Yes.
Well, this is in Burma, and the man standing next to him is the interpreter for Dr. Ian Stevenson. And the boy is the same ethnicity, but he remembers a past life as an American bomber pilot in the Second World War who crashed in Burma. And you can see he's got blonde hair and blue eyes and much lighter skin. And when he was really small, he refused to wear these clothes. He wanted trousers. He wanted to eat with a knife and fork. He refused the way they eat food. He wanted hamburgers. And all these things he talk about being a pilot. And you see how his body looks so Western, so American. And it's weird how that would come through. And so there's 100 cases like that in this book. So I find that stuff fascinating.
Well, I've read the kind of the past life, especially when it comes to children. I find that really interesting. There was a series on TV. You probably know the name of it off the top of your head, where they went. It's a good few years old now. It must be about over 10 years old. But I've had a couple of guests on whose children were on it, and on one particular episode, I remember the lady who had the son. They basically showed their son Titanic once, just a small part of the movie, and then the young boy started becoming obsessed with it. He'd draw the boat, but not just draw the boat. He would be drawing really detailed diagrams of the boat, which when they looked at them, they were actually the original drawings of the boat, of all of the designs. But and he'd absolutely be petrified of water, and this went on for months and months, and they just didn't know what was going on. And eventually it turned out, through researching him being on the program, that he was the chief designer of the Titanic. And it was just an absolutely incredible episode. I can't remember the name of the show now, but if you put Titanic and past life young boy into YouTube, it'll definitely come up. But I was gripped on that from the start until the end. So with these people who you've interviewed, who tend to see these UFOs, does it change their whole, life outlook after that? Are they more spiritual people? Or do they just slot back into reality? And to see something like that is obviously going to have a mighty profound effect on one's life, isn't it?
Yeah, some of them are spiritual, and it changes them greatly. And it's a thing where if you're going to get picked up by them, some kind of abduction scenario, they come back for you again and again and again. It's not just a one-off thing. It goes right through your life. And some people talk about their parents having the same experience, and it's intergenerational. And I talked to one guy, he said he talked to his grandmother about it, and she said, "Oh, they're just the little elves. Don't worry, they'll always bring you back. They won't harm you." And it's kind of like she had this experience as well. But some people...
So on the occasion where people are abducted, they're abducted physically with their actual body, or are they sort of taken out of their body on this expedition into the unknown?
It seems to be both. People have physical marks on their bodies. Like sometimes they'll wake up and there'll be 3 pinpricks on their wrist in a triangle shape. And I've seen pictures of this, and lots of other people do it. Some people tell me they wake up at 3 a.m. in the back garden and they're locked out of their house. Sometimes they wake up, their pajamas are on inside out, or they're wearing somebody else's pajamas. I had this guy, Terry Lovelace. He had a really extensive experience with UFOs and aliens and things. And he had an X-ray a few years later, and they saw something in his leg, this whole kind of alien implant thing. And it was a square with 2 wires coming out of it. And the radiologist was looking at his leg, and he went off and got a doctor, and they were looking, and the doctor was saying there's no scar. Something that big going into your leg would leave a scar. I just can't see how it got in there. And so he said to doctors and things, I want this removed. And they refused. Basically, they said, it's not causing you any problems. Doing surgery is really a hard hit on your body, and we don't do it unless we have to. And if this isn't causing you any trouble, we're not going to do the surgery. So eventually, he found a surgeon in Mexico who agreed to do it.
Of course, in Mexico. Of course.
He woke up the morning when he was supposed to go to Mexico, and there was this huge bruise on his leg. And there's a photograph in his book. I've seen these photos. He had identical bruises on both legs, this kind of big red patch. And it was as though the implants, there was one in each leg. And they didn't see the other one because they didn't x-ray the other leg. And so he went and got the x-ray done, and it was gone. And so it was like the aliens knew he was going to go and get it removed. So they got it the night before to be sure that the humans couldn't get hold of it.
Oh my goodness! It sounds like some sort of tracker device, doesn't it?
Yeah. And there's others have been collected and analysed, and they're very weird. All the minerals and isotopes and things with them.
I'm absolutely blown away. I didn't even realise. I obviously I have heard some stories of UFOs, but I've certainly never heard of abductions or. Would you want to be abducted yourself and have one of these experiences?
No, I'm too much of a scaredy cat. It was just the other day. I woke up at like 2 a.m. and there was a bright flash of light in the room, and I looked up and looked like a shadow being on the other side of the bedroom. And I was sitting up, I was full of adrenaline, I was wide awake, and it was like, what the hell's going on? And it was my wife. She went to the loo, and the flashlight was her opening the door to come back in, and then she was having a glass of water before she got back into bed. But I was so scared, I thought there's no way I'd want to meet any aliens.
I guess all doing this and doing your podcast and all of your research probably does make you a bit hyposensitive to any, noise downstairs or something going on. Who is it? Who could it be? I can imagine that's a reaction.
Yeah.
So, sort of podcast to one side then, and do you do your own paranormal investigations? Do you sort of get out there to maybe a historic site and do some of your own investigations?
No, I don't do that sort of thing. I will go and see mediums to see what comes up. I take people through past life regression because I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, and that's what I specialize in. I've got a diploma in clinical hypnotherapy, and I'm certified in past life regression therapy. And so I do sessions just about every day. I've done hundreds of them. And I've seen so many people go through past lives and seen how it can be really healing and very insightful and helpful.
It's really interesting. So how does it work then? How would you, because for instance, I'm very curious about my past lives. I've got a funny feeling that I know that I think I have an an inkling, but how does it work? How would, for instance, I find that out? How does the process work even?
Well, with the hypnosis, it's just the hypnotic induction where it takes you down into this hypnotic state. And I wouldn't call it a trance because there's nothing's ever been found scientifically that you call a trance. They've hooked people up, they put all those sucker things on their head and they analyze the brain waves and things. And they've never found anything unique that you could say is a hypnotic trance. It's just being very, very relaxed. It's like when you're in bed and you're just falling asleep. And I take you down through lots of relaxation and visualization. And we get to a point where we ask your spirit guides to be with us. And we ask them to show you the past life. And it's like they know all your past lives and they know what's best for you. And I always it's like I imagine them sitting there with a remote control, flipping through the menu to choose which past life to show you. Depending on what we're doing, if it's therapy, we might say to the guides, take us to the past life that is the origin point of the issue that you're experiencing in this life. Or we might just say, show us the past life that would be most beneficial to view today. But there's different ways of getting into a past life when you're hypnotized. One of the ways I do it is I say, well, you're in this really nice garden, and at the bottom of the garden there's this wall that's about 8 feet tall and it goes all the way across, and there's a gate in the middle. And I'd say, go over to the gate, and on the other side of the gate is one of your past lives. Now open that gate and step through. And then I say, okay, where are you? And so before then I've described everything for them. But from then on, they describe everything for me because it's coming into their imagination. And the thing about it is, because it's your imagination, you might feel like you're making it up. But then the past lives that show up can be so unexpected and so unpredictable, but at the same time make perfect sense in how they relate to your current life.
It's really interesting. And I guess when it comes to the imagination, and I've come to this conclusion recently myself, your own mind and your own thoughts. When something comes in that's, my first reaction when I'm doing mediumistic, because I had this big problem for a long time, saying, is it me or is it a spirit person? And then I just got to the point where I thought, well, Jason, you know your own mind. You know how your own mind works. Like, if something is coming in and it's just come in as a fresh thought, chances are that is a spirit person. So what about, because I know we're going to get onto a level of technicality that you might not necessarily but surely some souls are new souls. They haven't had an incarnation before. Do you ever do one of these and think, oh, well, actually, this is a new soul that hasn't had a past life, or is that not even a thing in your belief system?
What I think, what I've come across is what I get told often is Earth is a really hard school.
Mm-hmm.
And that you have to prepare to come to Earth. So you have other lives on other planets that are easier schools. And Earth is something you have to build up for. And Earth's not the only tough school in the universe. There's maybe many of them, but I have a thing where during the session we encounter your spirit guide. Sometimes they don't show up. I never promise you're going to meet your spirit guide. Most of the time they show up, and I ask, how many past lives has this person had? Sometimes they'll say 20. Sometimes they'll say 2,000.
Oh, blimey.
But there's always a thing of talking about how Earth is really tough, and you can't come here as a new soul, and this is your first time being incarnated, because you just won't be able to handle it.
Well, it is very, very dense energy, isn't it? It's very heavy, and that's my kind of experience of it. And what you're saying actually does make perfect sense. How many past lives have you had?
I don't know. I've been maybe seen 10, and the different sessions I've been taken through. And it's something I do every few years when I feel that it's the right time to do it. And that's what I usually say to clients as well. It's almost like your spirit guides want to show you something. And so they'll start subconsciously influencing you. And so you use your intuition and you think, yeah, you keep getting this sort of niggling feeling. Oh, I should do a past life regression.
Do you know what? I've been feeling it myself recently. I don't know why I keep feeling it. I've got a feeling that I was like a suffragette or a very, very, very rebellious, standing up for the right things kind of lady. I don't know why I keep thinking that, but I do think that that's a past life of mine. I just have an inclination from my personality. It's really interesting. I think everything your podcast is about, I think I'll probably find myself listening to it, Simon, and delving into that. When you do these past life regressions, then I guess it's quite moving for a lot of people to have that and healing at the same time.
Yeah, I often see people in tears, and it's not a thing where they're crying and sobbing. It's more like an energy release or an emotional release, and they're talking normally, but the tears are streaming down their face. And it's like it's a bit of a joke in the house. So my wife will say, "How's the session going?" I say, "Oh, I made them cry," and she'll go, "Yeah, nice one, well done." Because that's where
Sign
the
of a
healing
good
is.
session.
Yeah, but when I've been taken through sessions and I've had insights that I would never normally have that have been really useful. And I went to this past life where I saw myself as a small girl in a park, and the park was quite odd because it was a really steep slope. And you think, well, who on earth would think that's a good place for a park? But 2 years later, I was in a place in North London I'd never been to before, and there was the park, exactly as I'd seen it in the past life regression.
Oh, wow.
But that life went on, and I saw myself as a nurse in the First World War in France. And we were a few miles behind the front line, and all these injured soldiers were coming in. And we had this huge canvas tents, and all the soldiers were in the beds, and there was a lot of rushing around. And I remember, I'm saying I remember like it's me, but I was moving around the beds a lot. The nurse's uniform had long skirts to the floor, and they kept getting caught on things. And I remember feeling annoyed with it. Almost like, why do we have to wear these stupid uniforms when they're getting caught? And it felt like an old complaint, like I'd thought this for months or years, which I'm a bloke. I would never have had that experience.
It's crazy, isn't it?
But then that I returned to that life a few years later in another past life regression, and I saw myself on a street in London next to a car, and I was with the husband. And there was some big problem. I can't remember what it was, but I think I remember saying, "It's okay, I can sort it out." And he's kind of looked at me in a sort of, "Oh, don't be ridiculous. You're just a silly little woman. You couldn't deal with this." And it's that viewpoint of having a man talking down to you because you're female. I would never get that insight, but that really affected me as well. I got really angry, and I could really feel it during the session. It wasn't just a viewing it like you're watching TV and you're not that fussed. And I had this thought of, you don't know what I'm capable of. You don't know what I dealt with in the First World War when I was a nurse, and the horror and the stress that we dealt with. And you talk to me like I'm some stupid little woman. And so you see all that coming through. I would never have, had that viewpoint if I hadn't done the past life regression.
It's fascinating. Do you know what? It's funny what we're talking today because it's been on my mind recently, and I think you've pushed it right to the forefront of my mind. Yeah. I'm now very curious. I now want to find out. Well, I'm certainly going to be listening to your podcast myself, and if anyone wants to, which I'm sure they will, because it sounds absolutely fascinating, then people could just go to the show notes and find out more about it. But Simon, it's been fascinating. I think some of your stories are just absolutely mind-boggling and wild. And I thank you for coming on to the Soul Sync and sharing some of your experiences.
Well, it's been great. I love talking about this stuff.
I can tell that. I can tell by the amount of episodes you've done and the amount of books you've got. I'm sure lots of people are going to want to dive over to your podcast. So, I wish you all the best with what you're doing. It sounds great.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's been good to talk to you.
It's been good to talk to you too. Thank you.